like how do we, and I'm curious your perspective, like how do we make winter training, if you're as a high school program, right, working with high school athletes, middle school athletes, mostly high school athletes, how do we make like the winter training? Because we all know the narratives of it's winter, it's hard work, it's on the erg, it's, just dreading cold weather, cold, dark erg rooms, and soon I'm going to see what rowing is again. I despise that narrative to a degree because I think the value in what you gain out of winter is what really propels you in the spring and beyond, like what you learn in the winter, whether regardless of the intensities of that training. But how do you manage the winter, or how does your team, like, what are some things that you think about in terms of like just managing the winter training and keeping it fun, keeping it engaging, and getting athletes to truly understand the value of the erg?
You hit the nail on the head of like the narrative that we put out there is like super important, right? Like our community does a really poor job of like making the erg approachable, right? I get very frustrated when I hear like grumbling and griping about the winter, right? Because if that is the pervasive attitude, the winter is going to suck, right? It's the same thing we say to our kids every time they do a 2K, and it's kind of become like a speak and response kind of thing, like more of as like like not necessarily a joke, but like they kind of know what's coming. Like, hey, like if you think it's going to go poorly, what's going to happen? And they go, it's going to go poorly. Like, yeah, it is going to go poorly, right? Like, so if we enter winter thinking it's going to suck, it's gonna suck, right? Like, and like I got to the US via a summer camp, right? Like that's how I got my visa here. I met my future wife here, like, and the best advice I got at summer camp was when you're interacting with kids is like whatever you put into that space, like whether it's down at the waterfront as a lifeguard, archery, and then I moved into the teaching space in a classroom, is like they're going to feed off that, right? Like that's, and again, this isn't, I don't think I'm saying anything original here, but like whatever you put into those conversations and your body language and your attitude is what the kids are going to feed off in front of you. And so if you as coaches say it's going to suck, or you're grumbling as well, or your body language is that, then yeah, the kids are really not going to enjoy it. And so we're very intentional as a staff talking about that and like making sure that like, we got to make sure that we are excited about it. And I don't mean like over the top, like fake rah, rah, rah. I genuinely, and I say this every year to the kids, and I'm sure they don't believe me, and some of them are going to see this video and they're going to eye roll when they see it, because I say it every year. Winter is my favorite season every year. And the reason being is the productivity you get out of the erg as a teaching tool is way better than any other tool, I think, that we have at our disposal, because you're in close proximity to the kids. You get to see them make these giant gains technically, right? And you get to see them go through something that is they find difficult, which I think is huge value, right? There's always value in doing something hard, but whatever it might, it doesn't have to be rowing, it could be anything. But like, there's definitely a cultural issue around the erg being difficult, which we can talk about that a little bit later about the progression of that and 2King. But I just feel from a developmental process standpoint, I get really geeked about seeing them doing things that are difficult and then seeing them succeed, because they will find success at some point through that process, right? And that's super important for them developmentally as adolescents to see that. But you also have to champion that for them, and they have to hear that messaging, right? Like teenagers, I heard this at a Chris Chase conference 12 years ago, 15 years ago. And the psychologist that was speaking there was very clear that like teenage brains work in 2-week cycles. That's about all you get. So a teenager that can think past 2 weeks is like unusual. So you got to keep reminding of these things. Like our job is difficult because you are repeating the same thing over and over again, and you're trying to find different ways of how to do it and make it engaging at the same time.